Orlando is tiny.
Is it in...
It's not even as big as Singapore.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Impulso podcast by Momentum Works. So it's been a while since we've been in the office, or actually recorded a podcast, right? We've been on a very long business trip.
I have been on the road from the 8th of March till the 2nd of April. So that's about
Almost a month.
Almost a
We
month.
went to a lot of cities.
I checked out lots of hotels. I mean, hotels can be very nice.
I don't like staying in hotels, but I was so glad to come back to be in my own home. Anyways, today we are going to be talking about not a country that we visited, but something exciting that's been happening in the news, which is that Didi, China's ride-hailing app, has announced that they didn't announce. Sorry.
They did announce.
Oh, they did announce.
They announced.
Oh.
Yeah.
They announced that
To Chinese media.
They announced to the Chinese media that they would relaunch its food delivery operations in Brazil.
Have you used Didi before?
I use Didi every time when I'm in China.
Use Didi app or use the Didi WeChat?
I use Didi in Alipay.
So that's Didi, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the mini program.
Yes. How's it?
Okay lah, it's just, it gets me my car. I put in the wrong address once and then I went to the wrong place.
Okay.
But the driver was really nice, so he brought me to the correct hotel.
I feel that the Didi in China has managed to sort of segment the drivers. So when you take the premium car, it's really premium. So they will make sure that they go out wearing gloves. I mean, help you sort of load and unload the luggage, and give you water, give you Wi-Fi. No, not Wi-Fi. The cable, the charging, etc. But when you get the fast service, it's really fast.
But it's not. Sometimes they smoke in the car. They don't smoke in the car, but you can smell the
If you use premium, you will not see that, because I think Chinese consumers are quite particular. If they see that in premium, they will make a complaint. Yeah.
Didi is quite big in Brazil as well, right?
Didi has been in Latin America since 2018, I remember. So they acquired this company in Brazil called 99 Tax or 99, and they launched their own operations in Mexico. So some of our friends were actually in the talks back then, and people were saying that, okay, why would they go so far? But you kind of understand, because that's a market where the only viable competitor is Uber, and they believe that in emerging markets, they could beat Uber.
Is Brazil the only country that Didi is in apart from China?
No.
I just said Mexico.
No, but Uber's not in Brazil anymore.
I'm not quite sure. I don't think Uber is bigger than Didi in Brazil.
But Uber Eats exited Brazil, right?
I don't know.
The ride-hailing is in Brazil. I saw a chart from Measurable AI. I think they are in terms of value.
So I do remember that in 2017, the three largest cities of Uber in terms of number of orders. Guess which three?
Taiwan.
Taiwan is not a city.
Taipei.
Taiwan is tiny. I mean,
Orlando.
Orlando is tiny.
Is it in
It's not even as big as Singapore.
Mexico City?
Yeah, that's number 2. Okay, what's number 1?
Is it in Brazil?
Yeah, São Paulo. São Paulo was the largest city for Uber in terms of number of rides. Okay, the third largest. Test. Which is not a city. Which one?
Argentina.
Argentina is small.
Okay. Okay, give me a hint.
It's a market which Didi is also in, but it's not in Asia. It's not in Latin America.
Saudi Arabia. Actually, I don't know. Scroll down. Show me what markets they are in. Australia.
No, Australia is not big. I mean, the whole country is the same population as Taiwan.
Where are they in? Is it a Middle Eastern country?
Yes, it's a Middle Eastern
Dubai.
country. No, Dubai is not a country, and the second is not Dubai. And by the way, we're talking about city, not country. What's the biggest city in the Middle East?
I don't know.
Do they teach you geography, Denise?
Do you know what's
the biggest city in the Middle East? Who knows what's the biggest city in the Middle East?
Okay.
It's Qatar city.
Qatar is not a city, Qatar is a country. The capital is Doha, and the whole country is 200,000 people.
Oh. Clearly we don't know cities. Okay, so who's the third?
Cairo.
Where is
Cairo? Like
Egypt.
Cairo, Egypt?
Oh.
Yeah. Didi is also in Egypt. Yeah.
Didi is in Egypt?
Oh
Didi
wait, we wrote an article about it before.
Yes.
I feel like yes we did. Yes we did. Okay.
If you think about that, Didi is now in all these 3 markets. I mean, doesn't mean that they are the most lucrative, but they're definitely, big. 20 plus million people, pretty inadequate public transport infrastructure, lots of cars on the road, and lots of demand for ride hailing, and lots of demand for safety as well. So these are good markets for ride hailing. But today we're talking about food delivery.
Yes. So, I mean, we know that Didi's ride hailing has been doing well in Brazil, right? And then they've recently announced that they are going to be entering food delivery under the similar brand as their ride hailing, which is so it's called 99 Food.
Yeah, it's a company they acquired. I mean, the whole brand name Didi uses in Brazil is 99. Some people might not know how big Didi's international business is. I think we have some numbers here, right? So Q3 last year, it exceeded 10 million orders a day. So to put that in perspective, they do about 30 million in China a day. So which means that the international business is only 1/3, of the China's business, which is actually significant.
And most of it comes from ride hailing, right?
Most of it come from ride hailing, and most of this come from Latin America. So I think the addition to Mexico and Brazil, they're also in other countries like Costa Rica, Chile.
But for ride hailing or for food delivery? Because most of the countries that they're operating in, they are only operating in the ride hailing space,
Yes.
right? They haven't really entered food delivery.
They started food, I think 2018 or 2019, probably 2019, 2018. They started in Mexico, and people who did that. With that part of that process, I used to work for Easy Taxi, which was headquartered in Brazil, and they also hired some of our ex-colleagues in Mexico. I remember that the first days of launch of their food delivery operations in the city of Guadalajara, which is where many drug laws are, they literally went to like every restaurant that Uber Eats had business, and they observed and they tried to poach the restaurant.
Interesting business strategy. So in 2018, they started food delivery. And then, of course, in 2019, they kind of tried entering food delivery in Brazil. That
Yes.
was their first attempt.
That's their first attempt in Brazil, and in December 2019. I think back then they also had a debate of whether they should focus more resources to make Mexico really big, or they should like enter another market, the bigger market of Brazil. So I think the operative on the ground managed to convince the management that they should try Brazil. But December 2019, very interesting timing.
Yes. It's when a lot of things happened. So
A lot of things happened.
COVID
Like
and all. Technically, COVID was when food delivery really picked up as well.
Yeah.
yes, but if you only start in December 2019,
You haven't built the infrastructure.
chances
and
are,
you're
by the
fulfilled.
time all this surge comes, you are not able to catch it because you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have enough riders, you don't have enough restaurants.
And I guess that's kind of why it didn't work out for Titi's food delivery in Brazil, right? In 2022, they kind of exited the market.
I think the bigger issue is that, and of course, you see the media reports in China saying that it's because iFood, and that's the leading player in Brazil, they had more than 80% market share, and they had exclusive with all the large restaurant chains, and they tell the restaurant, hey, don't work with 99 Food. But I spoke with some people involved in operations of Didi back then. They point out the bigger issue is that they didn't know how much resources they should commit. They didn't know who are the right people to hire, and then COVID happened, right? Lots of things were in flux, so they couldn't capture that.
Then they kind of put a pause on it.
I saw that iFood actually had contracts with about 350,000 plus restaurants.
In Brazil.
Yeah, in Brazil.
Like exclusive contracts.
I personally think that, I mean, when I was running Foodpanda, we try to enforce the exclusive contract. It works when you are the dominant player. It doesn't work when somebody else has, I don't know, like a market share that's within the same magnitude. So for instance, if you are 80%, the other one's 5%, then you can enforce exclusive, unless the government comes in saying that, hey, you can't do this. But when you have like 40%, the other one has 20%, it's very hard for you to enforce.
I would think so, because as a merchant, why would
Yeah,
I?
why
would I
to
only
give
want to work with
exclusive
you?
rights? Yeah.
Yes, especially when you have alternative. But if the other party has like 5% market share, that's not a viable alternative.
But I guess in Brazil it's different, because I mean iFood has a pretty big market share. They own more than 80%, right?
It does.
But
So
I guess,
So before they started Latin America, Didi actually tried food in China. They tried to challenge Meituan and didn't work out. So because everywhere you go, the situation in China is kind of interesting, right? They tried to launch food delivery in one city. Then Meituan could send reinforcement from the nearby cities to defend in that city. So I presume that when they go to Brazil, I mean, the resources that are required are different, right? So I think it was kind of easy for iFood to defend back then.
but now I guess Didi feels a lot more comfortable in the position that they're at, right? Especially in Brazil, that they've decided to re-enter. And of course, we wrote an article about this today. It will be linked down below in the show notes if you guys want to check it out. But we talked a little bit about, obviously, how Didi's first attempt in food delivery in Brazil and why they're a lot more confident now in launching.
Yeah, a couple of things, right? So first, they have effectively built a two-wheeler sort of a mobility platform. It's called 99 Moto.
Yeah.
And according to their numbers, they have 700,000 active riders and across like more than 3,000 cities and towns. So that's pretty sizable fulfillment workforce that could be used for food delivery if they choose to. And part of...
Especially because this is two-wheeler mobility,
yeah,
right?
it's
It's
two-wheel.
not like a car.
Yeah, cars will not be efficient.
Yeah.
So they already have that two-wheeler network, and these people theoretically could be quite easily repositioned to do food delivery. Speaking of which, I just had a very interesting chat with a couple of like Brazilian executives visiting Singapore like earlier this week. Yes, last week. So they were telling me that somehow they have formed the mentality that they will use iFood delivery, they will use Rappi, or they call Happy. Yeah, the
RAPPI,
RAPPI, the Colombian company for delivery of groceries and for errands. I said, I mean, technically, but they use the same, like the same infrastructure, right? And he said, yeah, I don't know why, but when we think about food delivery, we think about iFood. When we think about the rest, we use Happy. So in that way, I think amongst the premium customers, some kind of mindset has already been built. So for Didi to challenge that, it will probably take some resources.
But that's interesting to think about, right? So again, obviously Didi themselves feel that they are in a much better position to be entering the Brazilian food delivery market now. But I think the question is, what would their strategy be? Are they going to come directly for the premium customers, which iFood holds a large market share of? Or are they going to be targeting lower tier cities? Are they going to be targeting people who do not use food delivery yet?
I think if you look at the strategy of all the Chinese big tech companies, they will always start with the masses and then slowly filter out the premium customers. So if you go straight to, it's the same for e-commerce as well, right? When Shopee and Temu went into Brazil, they didn't target the core of Mercado Libre. They actually go for the masses. And then they filter out, who are the sort of low-cost customers and who are the premium customers. So I think it's the same strategy here. They'll probably go for the masses, and I think this time around they feel more prepared, not only because of the infrastructure that they have built, they also have a fairly large fintech operations there.
Yes,
and
19. They have this like debit card called 99 cards or something.
Yes, I have some friends who used to process payments for Didi, and initially it was a system for them to pay the drivers, right? Because you need to send money to the drivers. But now they have expanded this into payment, consumer credit, etc. So we do have some friends who are in the fintech industry, and they were telling us that, of course, in terms of number of users, it's still far behind Nubank. But it's nonetheless one of the leading players, and I think far ahead of Shopee.
But I think this kind of also gives Didi an edge over its other competitors like iFood and all, because obviously when you do platform operations like that, it's always good to have synergy between your whole ecosystem essentially. And now they have hailing, they have food delivery, and then they have the payment integrated within all of it as well.
iFood also has a finance shop, right, called iFood Pago or something like that.
The payment, I'm not sure exactly what's included. If you look at what Didi has been doing with their digital financial services in Mexico, that could potentially be a blueprint of what they would do in Brazil. So actually, we did a study about a year and a half ago about why Meituan didn't get into digital financial services big time in China. It's because when you try to do that, everything was already dominated by Alipay and WeChat. But when you go to those like other markets, you don't have that dominance, which means that you can still have the potential to build that yourself, and you have the playbook from China.
And I think another reason as well why Didi feels a lot more confident now also is because they've kind of already established themselves in Mexico.
Yes.
So Mexico is one of the markets where it's also a pretty big market for Didi, and it's also one of the markets where they are in food delivery.
They do about like
300,000
what I heard is reliably above 300,000, and at times they can reach 500,000 a day in Mexico. So it's a fairly sizable volume. Yeah.
Oh, there's so much food delivery these days.
Yes.
And I guess that was something that you mentioned, right? Initially, when they first entered food delivery in Brazil, they were kind of confused on how much to invest in focusing in Brazil or Mexico?
Yeah, you don't know how much you should invest, and also how much you should invest in the sort of the time and the mind space of the top executives.
But I guess now that Mexico is kind of a little more established, then the top executives have more brain space, mind space. More time, and you can focus on the country, right?
Yeah.
But why Brazil? So obviously we know that Didi is in 14 different markets, but this is for their ride-hailing, right? For food delivery, they're only in a couple of markets. So Mexico is one.
I think they tried Chile, but somehow didn't succeed. I remember somebody in Chile was telling me about them entering and they exiting, but Chile obviously is a much smaller market.
So why did they pick Brazil as the next market for them to enter in food delivery?
It's a large market, and it has a profitable incumbent, iFood, which owns 80%. So, and I think that if you do some kind of consumer studies, you will find some gaps in customer experience, which they feel that they could actually tap into. And of course, with the infrastructure there, they have some advantage over, say Meituan, right? If Meituan's Keeta wants to enter Brazil, they need to build everything from scratch locally. Didi already has a fairly good infrastructure in terms of riders, in terms of customer base, in terms of payment systems, and in terms of the sort of the existing dispatching system with the two-wheelers.
Interesting that you brought up Meituan, because in the article, this is also something we talked about, right? That the reason why Didi kind of wanted to launch this whole food delivery in Brazil, in the article we said that the urgency of Didi's food delivery launch is to stay ahead of Meituan. Even though Meituan hasn't announced any plans to expand into...
They haven't announced any plans to expand, but a few weeks ago they posted a social media post on WeChat saying that they are actively recruiting country managers. So I suspect they already have a few markets by the study in mind, but they need to have the right team to be able to execute that. So I suspect Brazil is probably on that list based on the criteria that we mentioned just now. But of course, to do Brazil effectively, they will need a lot of investments and dedicated resources.
And of course, they also need someone who knows the market well, right? Which is interesting because the guy leading Keeta's overseas expansion is Tony Chiu.
Okay.
Tony Chiu, who was the one who led Didi's expansion into Latin America.
Yes, I'm amazed that after so many years, he's still in the trenches, actually leading operations, because, I mean, lots of people during that time who I knew have already sort of transitioned into investors or bloggers.
Maybe he likes
the thrill.
The thrill of
maybe.
running operations, like the busyness and all.
So Keeta is now in Hong Kong, Saudi Arabia. They have the drones in UAE, and but definitely for them to build a separate sort of app and a separate infrastructure, and just this market will not be enough for them. So they will continue their expansion. And from Didi's point of view, they have all these advantages in Brazil. And if one day Meituan decides to enter, and here's the thing, right? Meituan doesn't decide to enter a market lightly. Once they enter a market, they go full force. And that's probably the reason why they decided not to do Southeast Asia, because at this moment, it's just not attractive enough. So with all this, Didi probably calculates that, okay, they need to build this up before Meituan has any chance.
So this is kind of on Didi's end, just a preemptive strike, right? I mean, they already have the fulfillment network.
Yes.
They have the ecosystem in Brazil.
They have the consumers, they have the payment, they have like all these things ready. Yeah.
It's interesting how kind of the person they're most concerned about, or their competitor that they're worried about, is someone who hasn't entered the market yet. And not the person who is leading the market.
That was interesting, right? I mean, over the last few years, I've met like a number of Brazilian executives in e-commerce. So everyone's puzzled, right? They ask me, hey, I just talked to AliExpress. They're not worried about Mercado Libre. They were worried about Shopee. I just talked to Shopee. Shopee is not worried about Mercado Libre. They're worried about Temu. So there's either something wrong with these Chinese players, or there's something that I think the local players don't know yet.
I don't think it's something wrong, right? I think it's just that all the Chinese players are aware of the capability and the efficiency at which a Chinese player can operate if they were to enter.
I think they're more afraid of the potential because, like, for example, iFood is already there, so they know like what they're doing. But
yeah, so you can look at iFood.
The uncertainty scares them probably a bit more.
You can. I don't think it's much about uncertainty, but if a player is already there and you can sort of know. I mean, for an incumbent who is already big, we talked a lot about how Pinduoduo broke into Alibaba's dominance in China, right? When you look at incumbent who is big, you know that which are the things they're good at and which are the things they're not comfortable with. But if someone who you know that has not been there, and if that player is committed, you don't know what they would do.
Yeah.
You know what they're capable of, but they are very nimble.
You don't know what their strategy is if they were to enter the market as well.
I think a latecomer is more flexible compared to incumbent. Incumbent, quite often they have built some expectations, they've built some business model, they've optimized a lot of things. So for them to change course is actually quite difficult. Yeah.
That's true.
But that said, I think incumbents theoretically should be at a good position to defend because they already have the establishment in the market. So the question is, same for how Alibaba should have defended against Dodo back in 2017, 2018 China. I think this is what, Mercado Libre, iFood, etc. in Brazil, they should look at the lessons there, right? How do you defend against upsurgent who would play the game very differently?
And I think don't just brush them off as a small competitor, right? Because you don't know how fast they will grow.
No, I think back then when I look at Alibaba, they took Pinduoduo very seriously at the top level. Mid levels were probably not so concerned because they didn't know, but top level took them very, very seriously. But it's just from an organizational point of view, it's very hard to mobilize the resources to play the game that Pinduoduo was playing.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see how iFood plans to defend itself against 99 Food.
I think for both of you need to make a trip to Brazil. It's a very nice
We
place.
should. That's what I was going to say. Should we go to Brazil?
If my Laoban will sponsor me to go to Brazil, I will
You
go.
need to create a opportunity for a business trip.
If anybody out there wants to invite Jangan to do a sharing
Mexico.
No, but we do have lots of businesses in China who want to go to Brazil and who also want to go to Mexico, which is another topic where we need to talk about at some point in time. I think lots of businesses from China, when they go to the market, they don't interact sufficiently enough with the local ecosystem. I think Didi is somehow managed to adapt well because when I look at their management in Brazil, most of them are locals.
They managed to hire a lot of locals into their management.
Yes, they managed to do that. I think there were lots of lessons learned along the way, but I think they've managed to find that pace. So this is also a lot of lessons for other companies who are expanding across the continent to do.
You need to know the local market. And local people usually know the local market a lot better.
And put a flag, we'll find a way to go to Brazil this year.
Yes, and we will go to Brazil this year. That's the plan. So thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Impulso podcast. We hope that you guys enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, do like and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on the latest happenings and trends in tech, new retail, and the broader digital economy. Thank you and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.